At the moment, I'm working for a roster of clients across business and consumer markets. So on Sunday, I was the leading female plastic surgeon in Birmingham. I was blogging for her. 3 days before that, I was an Italian hair salon in Bristol. Tomorrow, I'm going to be a leading imagery and map solutions provider in Cheddar. And by the end of the week, I'll probably do some bits and bobs for a couple of other clients that unfortunately I can't talk about. So, as a social media editor, lots of different hats go on and off, you know, and I guess that's what I'm trying to get across to you guys, is that you need to be versatile. It's good to get an idea of what your audience are about. You know, as journalists, we're used to standing on our little pedestals and broadcasting at our audience, and that's the way that you taught journalism, the way that I was taught journalism at NCTJ level, was they listen, you talk at them. You're the expert, you know, you're in charge. And social media, of course, has totally changed that particular relationship, and I think for the better. So to then move more into online, where you can actually get feedback and interaction, and blogging, I'm a huge fan of blogging, and I'll talk about blogging a little bit further on. For me, it's about being able to actually not just inform and educate your audience as an editor, as a journalist, but also actually being able to listen to them. You know, you can't broadcast at your audience anymore. You just can't. You have to listen to them. You have to engage them. And actually, the wisdom of the crowd, the wisdom of the audience, is a valuable tool for a time-pressed journalist. So remember that. You know, it's highly likely that your audience, when you start your career in journalism, your audience knows more than you do about the subjects you're writing about. You know, and that leads us into things like crowdsourcing and citizen journalism. And there is a place for citizen journalism, I think, despite what some of the old school hacks out there might tell you. You know, I think citizen journalism is an incredibly important and powerful part of being a trained journalist today. I wanted to talk about my journalistic background and how that's useful in my current role as a freelance social media editor, because I think it's important that journalism students today realise that the skills they've got are very transferable and that they can work online or in a traditional newsroom. As journalists, you have skills and experience and hopefully a way of thinking that you're developing, which is essential if you're going to work online. If you're going to represent, for example, and be freelance like me, represent a range of clients across Twitter, Facebook, you know, be their blogging voice, you need to have flexibility in how you view and talk and liaise and deal with them. You can't talk at them anymore, you need to listen. You know, I've always said the most valuable communication skill is listening. You know, it's not about broadcasting to the audience anymore. I couldn't do what I do as a social media editor without my NCTJ behind me. I just couldn't do it. You know, I'm someone that asks quite a lot of questions on a daily basis about everything. I love people. If you don't love people, you shouldn't be in this room. Simple as that. You know, because my journalism lecturer said news is people, and he's absolutely right. You know, it comes back to being about people. Whatever the topic, if you can bring it back to a people-based story, you're being a good journalist, to my mind. You know, so don't get too het up with the tech and the platforms. When you're online, looking at places like Twitter, it's still all about relationships. It's about the relationships between people on those sites. You know, and people forget this. PRs forget this. Marketers forget this. They get online on social media sites and they're still pushing that message, baby. Wrong. It's about building relationships. You know, so remember that. I mean, I guess for a want of a better word, we would call it building our contact book. Yeah. But that's the same thing online. When you're talking to people on Twitter, when you're getting the news feed that gives you an idea for a story, you're just building your contact book. That's all it is. You're just doing it online. Listening is key, as I say. Really important. And also being able to not just listen to the person that you're interviewing or your client. I refer to clients, but for you guys as trainee journalists, it'll be the people that you're interviewing for copy. But you need to hear them. Don't just listen to them, hear them. Yeah? Because often you'll find that it's the things that someone doesn't say that can lead you to the really juicy stuff in terms of story content. You know, I'm constantly listening and hearing what my clients are saying when I interview them, and I pick up on what they don't say and expand upon that. You know, it's not to be controversial or bolshy or push them too hard. It's just to get the very best out of them, so their copy is the best it can be. Yeah, I've got this plastic surgeon client in Birmingham, and she was very, I mean, we're about 6 months into the campaign now. She was very salesy, and she wasn't really talking about her and who she is and what she believes in. You know, she's had a huge amount of success commercially because she's very focused, incredibly successful businesswoman, but also a very committed and passionate surgeon, and the two can coexist. You know, but she wasn't bringing the personal stuff out. She was just talking about the figures and what she wants to deliver and achieve. And it's like, well, my job as an editor is to actually get behind that and work out what actually her audience wants to hear. It's not about her, it's about her audience. They're the guys that are going to be reading this stuff. I'm not pushing fluff from her. It needs to be the stuff that really gets people inspired and interested and engaged. So I said, that's all very well, but what about your average day? Can you tell me about a day in the life of a plastic surgeon, please? And I got her to draft up a blog post, which I then went back in, redrafted, and a few grammatical points, a few keywords for her industry, because obviously when you're writing online, everything is potentially good Google juice, you know. So these are new skills that we're learning as journalists and editors, is integrate your keywords into your content online. You've got to. And she wrote this blog post about a day in the life of. She really enjoyed writing it. It was quite straightforward for me to edit because it was about her. It was very personal. And guess which blog post has had the most hits and the most traffic in the last 6 months? Yeah, you got it. The one about her. That's where being a trained journalist and being an editor massively helps working in an online context, because you pull the very best out of the interviewee, often without them realising it.